Many years ago, nearly 1,000 to be exact, in 1561, the Krieg was just a small village. It wasn't known as the Krieg back then. There were fishermen and fishmongers, and there was a small pub that kept everyone hydrated. It is in this inn that our city begins. I'm sure you've all heard of it. The New Stone Mound. On March 15th, 1561, 4 powerful men walked in and demanded 1 lager, 1 stout, 1 gin, and 1 schnapps from the barkeep, Nicholas. He's unimportant. The lager for Bailey Boyd, stout for William Ward, Samuel Sanford had the gin, and the schnapps went to Geoffrey Gibbons, of course. During their first and many subsequent rounds of drinks, the 4 men played a game of forks. As the men played and drank, they also drew lines on a map rolled out along the table, divvying up the Krieg, splitting it into 9 very unequal parts. The wards got control over the old mining quarter, known as Sunken Hills, and Migration Station, a dense shanty town of a neighborhood overrun by Cretans not native to the Krieg. They also held on to Ward Island, where the city's prison was established in 1632. Bailey Boyd secured himself and his family domain over the docks and ports at Grimstep and Walton Landing. He also grabbed what is now known as Union Town. Sanford took control of the district and the Strip, home to the city's ultra-elite and all their shenanigans. Gibbons garnered control over Latchkey and the Res, home of the financial hub and some of Krieg's oldest neighborhoods. Sanford and Gibbons helped to pioneer the red light district in the Krieg and were able to firmly establish it within their territory. Get it? Got it? No? Oh well. Now, it's 2560. Almost a millennium after the founding of the Krieg, the New Dons are having their annual meeting to discuss the city's financial future. The Dons sit around the table of the Dons drinking ale, but their expressions are far from cheery. Shy, Tony Ward wasn't much for talking. Still, his gargantuan frame demanded respect. Beth, the Brick Sanford, was known by many for her short temper and ruthless retaliation, but above all, her lisp. If anyone so much as dared to call her Beth and not Beth, she would beat them to death with a brick. Des Gibbons was so monotone in their fashion and lifestyle that the Gibbons family gave them the nickname Flowery, just to spice it up. Stoned off of the best dope in the city and thinking about their next hooker, Des did not participate in the conversation. Railroad Ryan Boyd ran away from his family at the age of 14, but the untimely death of his father prompted him to return and continue the Boyd dynasty. First seen as an outcast, the young leader has made a name for himself among the other Dons.
It has become clear to me that the Gibbons and Sanfords have done nothing to aid in the conflicts of our citizens.
Well, everything is just dandy in the Strip. Get a hold of your districts.
They're your districts too. If you manage to shave off even 0.5% of your yearly profits.
That money is going towards peace and prosperity.
Outside New Stone Mound, Lex and Pot are huddled in the rain, talking in violent whispers, trying to be heard over the downpour. The two were talking about the rising tensions between the residents of Union Town and the Res. Pot rightfully thinks that the Boyds aren't being tough enough on the people striking along Grimstep, that Lex needs to grow a pair and show the lazy dock workers who's in charge. On the other hand, Lex is soft and a sissy and thinks too much about consequences. Lex is a weak heir to the Boyd Empire. As the pair's cigarettes are stubbed out, the 4 Dons walk out of the pub and are whisked away in their cars. Lex turns away from Pot and heads off looking for some hookers, or blow, or anything to take his mind somewhere out of the Krieg. As the undergrad starts to walk down the slick sidewalk, Pot pulls out a revolver and shoots him in the head. Upon hearing of the death of his one and only child, Railroad Ryan gets into his car and races along the Krieg to Ward Island, to Shy Tony's mansion. Ryan storms out of his car and marches up to the front door, all the while yelling, demanding that Tony help him out, avenge the death of Lex. Reluctantly, Tony agrees to help, and the two plot to blow up a karaoke parlor that high-ranking Gibbons family members like to frequent. Ryan leaves Ward Island with a pipe bomb in his passenger seat. The seatbelt was most definitely used. Ryan threw the bomb out his window into the front of the One OK Club and Lounge inside the Sanford portion of the red light district that night. Sadly, no one was around. Fearing for the life of their second-in-command, Dez asks Beth if Pot can hide out in a house on the Strip to wait for the bad blood with the Boyds to wash away. Having just had one of her nightclubs blown up, Beth agrees. Pot hides in the trunk of a Rolls-Royce as he is snuck onto the Strip. One of the Boyds' informants finds out where Pot was being stashed and tells Ryan. Ryan, now on a complete warpath to wipe Pot off the edge of the earth, goes down to Walton Landing and gets 8 of his goons to load up into a dinghy and ride to the Strip. The thuggish men sail across the water under the cover of darkness, balaclavas low and Uzis drawn. They stalk up the beach outside the mansion where Pot is holed up. They run inside, fitting the startled man with hundreds upon hundreds of bullets, as was the request of Ryan. Brick Beth was furious. Furious with Pot for shooting Lex, furious with Lex for dying, furious with Ryan Boyd for blowing up her bar, and now, once again, Boyd had destroyed another building of hers. In a desperate attempt to end the increasing violence, Beth calls for a meeting between herself and the Ward brothers, Shy Tony and Bashful Mike. At the meeting, Beth asks if Tony will speak to Ryan to calm him down. She, being a silly woman, also asks if Tony will get Ryan to pay some sort of reparations for the destruction he has caused her. Tony stands up and says thanks for the chat. Right as he steps outside, he says, "Goodbye, Beth," with a cheeky smile. That is a no-no. Even I'm not stupid enough to disregard one rule. Shy Tony and Bashful Mike are sitting inside their mansion on Ward Island, sipping on cognac, laughing at the foolishness of Beth. They're too deep in their cognac and misogyny to realize that Cinderblock Charlie, Beth's significant other, is creeping up their driveway silently. He steps out of his car, dragging a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire along the pebbled path. The two brothers, still blissfully unaware, blow heavy smoke rings into the air. Suddenly, Shy Tony is on the ground. Charlie stalks toward Mike, before taking a swing at his head, then another. Tony stands up in a haze and sees his brother being beaten to a pulp. A literal pulp. Tony rushes Charlie, pushing him over. Tony picks up his brother, and Charlie, and stuffs them into the back of his car, racing across the island, across the bridge, to the nearest hospital. When Charlie is pulled out of the car, he isn't breathing. Word of Cinderblock Charlie's death didn't take long to reach Beth. Her wrath knew no bounds. She immediately drove across the bridge in a bloodthirsty rage to Flowery Dez's penthouse in Latch Key overlooking the Strip.
What do you want?
Killing Charlie was the last straw. If the Wards and Boyds want a war, that's exactly what they're gonna get.
Go on.
You and I both know that in order for the Krieg to succeed in the next millennium, we need to take those bastards down.
That night, all of the pieces went into motion. Irreparable damage had been done to the city and its founding families. The Krieg rages on.